200 cops, we're back, mate. What's happening, Schultzy?
Well, mate, it's raining again here in Brisbane, just for something new. I'm not sure what it's like down with you guys, but yeah, the weather. I'm almost sick of the rain, so I'll be looking forward to winter and a bit of dry weather.
Yeah, I'm in Singleton, mate. We're training firefighters down here, out between the mine sites. So it's good. We're down in the middle of nowhere, and it's raining a bit tonight, I think. But no, we're good. We're good. But what do we got, mate? There's a couple of shout outs I'm a little bit excited about today, mate. We've got a bit of a
Yeah,
surprise.
well, yeah, mate, we won't let the cat out of the bag just yet,
Not
but
yet.
we will. We'll do a couple of shout outs. And thanks to like people, Ollie Jones, he's been a regular, got in contact with us. Really enjoyed. A lot of our content recently that come out that really goes in the nitty gritty of police. He's a copper himself, so and we've gave him a shout out a few times, but we've had two new ones as well. But before I do, mate, the butcher you met, Chris Luxton. I've
Yeah,
got to say, happy birthday for last week. I was meant to do it last week, but I forgot. So happy birthday to him. He'll be happy, and mate, we'll see if we can get a free brisket or something out of him for that.
that'd be good. Yeah, that's what we want.
um,
Happy birthday, Chris.
yeah. So, well, you met him for the first time the other day. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty good, mate. And a shout out to Ben Murphy. He got onto the podcast. Really likes it. He's currently a landscaper, but really interested in joining the police and really loves hearing what we've got to say about it. And yeah, so it's given him more inspiration to push forward and all that sort of thing. And I think he
Yeah.
tried once or twice before, but didn't get in. But I know you applied a couple of times, and I was lucky enough to get in
Yeah.
the first time. But yeah, just because you don't get in the first time doesn't mean you shouldn't reapply.
No, I was struggling to get 9.6, and in the end I got it. And the beat test was holding me back, but I got it. So you
Well,
just
mate,
push through, you're right.
you only have to get 5.7 now. So,
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. All
but
good.
mate,
We'll probably talk
but
about that later. Yeah. What else we got?
but mate, what we'll do is, and a shout out to Reese Ferguson. So Reese is looking at joining the job. He's a fiery. He's currently a fiery at the moment. I've been in there for a number of years, but he's looking at joining the police. And so in the conversation, I asked him. I said, "Oh, is there anything you wanted to chat about?" And he said, he said he would love to hear more thoughts on what life is like in remote towns, as in being a posted police officer. He said not so much the work aspect, but more of what everyday life is like, and also even to include how partners, wives, and kid have found those experiences. Maybe even wives and partners on the podcast to share their thoughts and experiences from the other side.
Mm,
Now, mate, do you want to do the introduction or do you want to do
yeah,
it?
better.
Oh, well, we
Yeah.
are delighted to have Emer Faye
I
on
thought I
here,
was doing the introduction.
Damo's wife. Are you doing it? But well, Damo, do you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, so what we thought was we could talk about the experience of working in remote locations. And when I say remote, I mean obviously we were posted. My wife and I were posted to Borroloola, but we're also posted to Tennant Creek and Alice Springs and Catherine. People outside the Northern Territory would consider them remote postings as well. They're not within the Northern Territory. Um, but who better to answer that than my lovely wife, Ema? Hello, Dale.
Hello, how you going?
Yeah, good, good.
Excellent.
Just so everyone knows, she's not with me. She's in Hanani, and I'm in I'm in Singleton. So we're all separated out. But I've sort of dropped a bomb on her. I said, "Oh, we were going to get you on tonight. Any chance you could come on?" So here she is. So
Right.
yeah, we're what we're thinking is obviously we were posted out to Borroloola, but I mean we lived in Catherine pretty well straight out of the college. So did you want to give us a bit of a rundown and just tell us what you felt like being on the other side of this? You weren't the police, but you were there very much with us and seeing what went on.
I don't know.
Good
Not
answer.
easy, not easygoing personality. Like when you just asked me, like, can you talk about remote stuff? I was like, yeah, I've done it, but I don't feel like I've done it as hard as some other wives and partners may have. And because I don't see Tennant Creek as being remote, even though when we were living there, it was actually officially a remote place to live and work. So, yeah, I just sort of rolled with it. I feel like that's how I approached being the partner of a policeman in all the remote areas and wherever we were, is I just rolled with it.
You did roll with it.
Yeah. Oh, if mate, if I can just so basically for any listeners, Damo and Emer, I met Emer almost the same time I met Damo, and we became good mates straight into college. So yeah, Emer, you moved up to Darwin as well, so you got to see right from the start of before Damo. You knew Damo before he was in the police, and then the whole policing. Like you get to see the whole period of him going through the police force and then exiting the police force, and you would have seen the changes in him over the years, I imagine.
Yeah, I guess his core personality has stayed the same. It's just I feel like the changes that I've seen in him and probably everyone that I know in the police is that they seem to change as they age. So they sort of lose that young excitement for the job that they first had, and they start to a bit more. But yeah, I reckon I've seen that in all the police that I know and know quite well. It's more of a maturity thing that happens.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. yeah. Touch more on the maturity of things because I didn't think we matured much at all.
No, like it's like instead of being so excited about the job and stuff, it becomes more about the system and what it's like being a police person in the system in the Northern Territory Cops, rather than, you know, I went to this job and that job. It's like, promise isn't working. This is frustrating. Too much. The bosses are doing whatever they're doing at the moment. And I guess, yeah, the conversation sort of like changed throughout the 15 years.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because we would have been talking about exciting stuff that became routine. So, I was in 6 pursuits last night. Like, yeah, it was a pain in the ass. I'm still doing paperwork. I'll see you in 3 hours. Whereas the first night it would have been, oh my god, I was in a pursuit. It was amazing. I've never driven so fast in my life. Like it would have been that, but it just got to the point where, oh man, I'm still at work. I'll see you shortly. So, yeah, I can understand that. But I think what he wanted to know more. So, I mean, the beauty of this, we can expand it out and go talk about being a police wife. But what about the remote stuff? So, I'll go Borroloola because that was a true remote community where I was uniform response police with other people, but we weren't a very big station. It was pretty small. So, how did you find that the on call side of things and just the constant doing what I was doing?
Well, I don't know if you can remember in Borroloola, there was not just the on call and work, but you also did a couple of courses and you had to go away for like a week or 2 weeks at a time. So I probably remembered those times when you're away for a prolonged week or 2 weeks away, because I was literally there by myself.
Yeah.
For a long time with a 6-month-old. Yeah, I can just remember being woken up a lot and then just trying to go back to sleep. Really, that's about it. So as I said, like I've got a chilled out personality. I've never been one of those wives or people that are worried about Damo going out at night and wondering if he'd return or whether he'd come back injured or anything like that. I never really worried because of his previous job as a bouncer. He didn't have a gun and all his accoutrements to help him. So I knew what it was like pre-police, because he had come home injured a few times just by bouncing, but he never came home injured as a policeman. And I didn't worry like some wives do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was.
I'd come home punched a few times. I probably just didn't tell you. That's all right. I was probably less injured than the person who punched me. That's why.
Yeah, but you come home with like blood coming out of your head and stuff like you did when you were a bouncer. So
Yeah. Turns out I didn't bounce so well. Yeah.
but yeah, it's just the disturbed sleep and like the sound of the on-call phone.
Oh, it was horrible.
You because it's always the same sound, and it's so loud to make sure that you wake up.
Yeah.
So it's you just don't get woken up. You get woken up in a start,
Yeah.
like a big
Actually, I
jump.
do remember. I don't know if you can remember it, but I remember getting home one night and you'd heard the kerfuffle that we were dealing with because it was in the camp that was basically behind the police station. So it was probably 100 or 200 metres through bush, but pretty thin, scrubby Northern Territory bush. And I'd heard this noise and I'd sort of woken up. And then about 5 minutes later, our phone rang and it was just a big shitstorm basically next door. So me and my partner had deployed out to that and we turned up in the middle and we hadn't really done much. Like we'd got in the middle and massaged problems away. I think we moved someone from that camp to another camp, but it was loud the whole time. There was a lot of screaming. And you got home. I got home, and I remember you saying you were awake the whole time, and it sounded like World War III. And it was like, yeah, that wasn't us. We were just giving people a lift. We weren't yelling and screaming. It was just we put people in the back and drove them to a different camp to try and dissolve the problem. But it would have sounded pretty bad knowing that I'd just been called out and the shitstorm was still going on next door. So tell us about that. Did you like those sort of things? Did you ever think about that, or was it not really a drama?
Not that I can remember, like, because I was getting woken up so often then between you being called out and having a baby.
Yeah.
I can honestly just remember mostly when you weren't there. So I can't even remember if you were away or whether you were called out, but I can remember being woken up in the middle of the night by people on the phone to the police station. So the police station was shut. It was like 11 o'clock or something at night, and it was like, what's the phone call that's attached to the police?
The little tough phone call button out at the front door.
Yeah, so they were
They would have
yelling.
been talking to comms. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were talking to comms, but it was so loud, like it woke me up. I could hear absolutely everything. To know that that's like right at your house as well, and you're there by yourself, that I found a lot more disturbing. And like, oh well, what if they come up here, or if I start hearing them fight, like they're already talking to the police, like the police aren't going to come any faster.
No.
That sort of stuff.
It's funny talking about the remote. How did you find outside the police, like making friends and socialising and stuff like that?
I found it quite good. Just because I'm one of those people that like to make friends. Like when you were saying how we got posted out to Borroloola, it sort of sounds like that we were sent there, but we actually opted in.
Yeah.
So Damo was like, hey, what about this in Borroloola? And this is what our life could look like. So, it's something that we both agreed to before we went. So we didn't just go out ignorantly. I sort of knew what I was getting myself into and what I had to do. I know not all wives cope with being remote. I know a few that didn't even cope with being in Tennant Creek, where there was like a decent enough grocery store, and there was, there's actually quite a few places to go out and eat, and there was a lot more stuff to do than Borroloola. But these particular wives, I never saw them out. They didn't socialise with anyone, not even like with other police wives. So I made friends with local teachers. I went to the play groups that were on. I actually became quite good friends with the other policemen that were there, including the relieving members that came, like when Damo was away. They helped me bottle some beer one time because Damo was big beer and then had to go to Darwin. So me and the other fella had to bottle his beer for him. So
that's right. Yeah. Yep, that was Shannon. Like, my beer needs to be bottled, and I'm not there. So it's like, yeah, we can do it. They went.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I was always open to having people come over, and I was lucky that there was another police wife at the same time when I was there, and we're of similar enough age, so we could do a few things together. And she was of the same type of personality. She'd already been out on stations and knew what it was like to live remotely. So we'd still.
Yeah. Well, that was Shannon's partner. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time, yeah.
I think a couple of times we went for like a tea and cake at the cafe on the few times it was open.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So,
sorry,
go,
mate. I just want to go back. you mentioned the phone, and like if I hear that ringtone now, I almost get flashbacks, like it because you're always listening for that phone. So yeah, and that's one thing my mum mentioned when she used to come out because she was retired and she came out. Mum and dad used to come out and stay, and she goes, "Yeah, you hear the phone ring, and you knew that, yep, they're getting sent out to a job again, just
Yeah.
yet again." So yeah, I don't know whether you have that, Damo. Do you when you hear that ringtone now or Emer,
Well,
does
the
it take you
ringtone
back?
at Borroloola was an old style flip phone that was an outdated mobile phone, but it had a very severe, like a sort of
Yeah.
ringtone to it that would jar you awake. So we had that a bit. So it was very jarring, and I know that quite often I'd get woken up and Ema would jump in the bed as well. So I remember that. But yeah, I think we've covered off like the dealing with the police side of things, and we've sort of spoken about um, your social life. You were at that stage a stay-at-home mum with a 6-month old. Jimmy was really little at that point. So um, I know that I found some of those smaller places were actually more social. Did you find that?
Yeah, well, as I said, like in Borroloola, I like always had company really if I wanted it. Like I can't remember being really bored, even with a baby. Like so, one of the teacher friends that I'm with, she had a couple of kids, and everyone liked to play with Jimmy. He was just there hanging out with us. Tennant Creek was one of the most social places as well. It was my
Yeah,
favourite place.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
so social, and there was such a really good community living behind all of the stuff you saw on the streets.
yeah. Yeah,
So
it was like work was a war zone, but then we had a really cool social group. So you could step out of the world that we were dealing with and then go back, which was always pretty good.
yeah, and
So,
one thing you don't realize is how much of a community, even like Borroloola has like a show for such a tiny place, and they still have like the pavilion stuff. There's people that have lived in the area for like 50 years that still come in and do things like the show and the rodeo and stuff. So there's always a really great, I call it an under community because it's what you don't see when you're driving through as a tourist, or even if you're there for a week or two. Like you've got to be living there for a certain amount of time to get to know these people and see what they do and how they hold the community together, really.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, very good.
always found like Borroloola. I mean, Tennant Creek. It was funny how you mentioned that, Emma, because that was what Dama calls it, my party town. It was my party town, but it did have a really good like feeling when you went there. Like the off work part of it was really social, and I found that in Borroloola as well. Yeah, those smaller towns, you have a much bigger connection with a lot of people. I think, like I've lived in the city now for 7 years since I left the police, and I can tell you, I caught up with more people in Borroloola than I do in the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I like those smaller towns, and you really get ingrained in the community and get to you see people more regularly.
Yeah, because they're just like literally a little walk away.
There's
yeah.
only one or two coffee shops.
Yeah.
I remember Catherine and Tennant Creek, and admittedly we didn't have kids at that point, but I remember thinking, oh man, I just want to have a sleep this weekend. Like I don't really feel like going to this particular party and then to this show and this and that. They were there was always something on. People were always willing to have social occasions, and it was just non-stop.
Well,
Yeah, I remember we had quite a busy social calendar, my dear.
we did. Well, I went to, you weren't there, I went by myself again in Borroloola, but there was a Melbourne Cup luncheon
Yeah,
one day that I went to. Everyone got dressed up and had bets on and that sort of thing. So people just did what they could to get together and hang out.
yeah, yeah. No, it's really
Yeah.
good, and I think it's universal and doesn't really matter about policing. Actually, it's funny we talk about it because when I was a kid, the town of Junda, which has just been put underwater this week, um, I remember out there, mum and dad were the same. So dad worked on the council, and mum was doing some teacher aid work, but mostly stayed home because she had lots of little kids. We were very social. Every weekend there was something on. There was just everyone was involved with everything. There were lots of volunteering for all the activities that went on around the place. And it just seems those little places, they are very social. The other thing that I noticed, and I know a lot of people ask me, I'm not sure if they came to you, Ames, but they said, "Oh, you're the new copper in town." Yeah, yeah. "Oh, do you have a partner?" It's like, "Yeah, my wife's up there. We got a little fella." "Oh, what does she do?" I said, "Oh, she's a school teacher." "Oh, I'll tell the principal." I was like, "No, no, no, she's staying at home with a baby." But it's like you'd be offered 5 jobs the minute you come into town. It's like they hunt down the local nurse or doctor or copper or teacher or whoever turns up and try and find out who their partner is and try and give them 5 different jobs in town. So there's always plenty of opportunity for anyone else who's coming. So if for any police out there who are thinking about going remote and are worried because you've got a partner who you're not sure what they're going to do, they'll do plenty. There'll be plenty for them to do. There's people get excited. They go, "Oh, we've got someone else. We really need help at the council office, or we need help here." And "Oh, is your husband a handyman, or is your wife good at this, or whatever?" It's really, there's a lot of opportunity in those little places.
Yeah, well, I was gonna just say, like with Ruth Palmer, she started off in Lajamanu working in the council office because the same thing. "Oh, great, like you're here. Can you do this job? You can read, you can write, you've got the basics. Here you go." And now she's doing amazingly well in the top, 40 most influential Territorians. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity to just go to communities, get so much experience that you wouldn't get anywhere else without even having to really apply for a job or the roles.
You'll get dragged out of your house basically to go to work. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can just go from wherever.
Yeah, exactly right. It's funny. We've sort of spoken about the remote stuff, and it is what it is. It's that you live and you make a life for yourself, and it just happens. But the only time I ever noticed any concern in your response to what we were doing was the day that I got called for Ben Hoffman, the active shooter job. But this is Darwin; it wasn't remote. But I do remember saying we got an active shooter, and I remember texting you that, and you're like, "Oh, what's the go? Is it all finished?" And I remember it wasn't at that stage; it hadn't been resolved, and we thought we had 6 deceased people. And I've just texted you back, "No, it looks like 6 dead," and it was the only time I ever sensed concern. Like you went, "Oh my god!" I think you wrote WTF.
That would be the time I'd say, but it's like I have a husband that runs to a gunfight.
Well, not that I did any gunfighting. I just ran in the general direction. I think if the bullets had come in my direction, I would have run the other way pretty quick.
Yeah, but you didn't even get called out. You just heard it was happening, and you're like, "I'm gone."
No, there was a negotiated call out. There was a negotiated call out. But
oh, come on, Damo, you did love it a little bit.
You were gone before.
It was a wild job. Yeah.
I know what you're saying, Emer. He did really. He loved the thrill of the chase.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, it was the only time I'd ever sensed concern. I remember going, "Oh, geez, I probably should let it know we're okay." So I think I texted you back an hour or so later. It was all resolved, and I just said, "Oh, it's all under control, but we got a massive investigation." And I think you were happy then.
So, yeah, all of the wives were a bit worried. I can remember messaging at least one other wife during that. There were quite a few that were worried. That's probably the most worrying one.
So, I mean, we're probably skimming over this a bit because this is just 3 people who've known each other a long time and we went to this sort of stuff all the time. But you got to remember a lot of other people are listening to this. So, do you want to sort of explain what went through your head when you get something like that?
Well, as I said before, I'm like, I don't overthink that stuff very much. And I'm like, Damo's got it. Like, he's had the training. They've got all the equipment. He knows what he's doing. So I never was really worried, except for, when you've got an active shooter and that's the stuff like that you see on TV, so your mind can sort of run away with you a bit more. But just with all like the normal remote stuff, you sort of know roughly what type of jobs you're going to get and what like you're going to be faced with as a wife, knowing what you're going to be faced with. So I never really was that concerned, but I do think it's just my personality. Yeah. But then a lot of police wives that I have spoken to, they've never really expressed any concern for their husbands at work either. But we're all quite strong personalities really in that friendship group. And as I said before, there are some wives who just their personality and nerves are a bit different and they don't cope with it as much as say the rest of us
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And in saying that, like, have you got any advice for people? Like, so you've got either whether it's a male joining the police or a female joining the police and their partner. Have you got any advice on how to, I suppose, deal with some of that stuff? I know you said that how you are a very relaxed person, like you just chilled and you go through the motions and all that sort of stuff. You're pretty solid mind. But is there any advice you can give on how you can help, like maybe deal with it, or what to expect if you're going into that sort of role where you're the partner of somebody that's going out being a police officer in these remote communities, or even being a police partner?
Is don't isolate yourself. So make sure you're friends with other police partners, because you can vent to them about the same things. It's not necessarily that you're worried that they're not going to come back home. It's more like, oh my God, like they've been working for 2 days straight and, oh, they're going to miss this birthday, or, all of that other home stuff. They're too tired to help. I'm exhausted because I've got a baby and I'm pretty much doing it all on my own. And also to make friends with the other police that your partner's working with too. That helps a lot, so that you can, stuff that your partner might not say, their mates will say. Just,
Yep.
just in general conversations, so that you can get more understanding actually from your partner's mates than sometimes your partner, because your partner will be like, sometimes consciously, but sometimes subconsciously, like trying to protect you.
Yeah.
Where the partners, like the people they work with, won't necessarily do that. So, and then you feel better because you know who your partner's working with, that they know what they're doing, they'll help protect, and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, just don't do it in isolation. Make friends with people that are in the same situation.
Yeah. And even those who aren't, I think you were good at making friends with plenty of people. There wasn't just police partners, and that we were social with, in those smaller places. You don't just hang out with the cops; you hang out with everyone.
Yeah.
So it was all the like-minded. You're not hanging out with crooks, but you're hanging out with your tradies and your nurses, teachers, doctors, all that crew. So there's a big social group there. Yeah, the local drug dealers might have come in.
I was just thinking you're going to a drug warrant.
Yeah.
Well, what are you doing here?
Yeah. We got a barbecue. Anyway, mate, here's your summons. We got a barbecue on this weekend. We come around, bring a loaf of bread. You'll be right. Yeah, no, it doesn't happen. Yeah. No, that's good. What else do you think? Is there anything you thought we'd ask you that we haven't asked?
No, I don't think, but I do. But I thought of one for people that are thinking of joining, and that there is quite a high divorce rate in the police. It is really hard to have a marriage in that type of situation, where people are just dropping a hat, they get called out, or they're not back for hours and hours and that sort of stuff. So just to be conscious, if you're joining the police, that the relationship and stuff's going to change, and you need to work on that as well.
And in saying that, Emer, that's probably a good point, because obviously I've known Damo for a very long time, like I have you. But Damo's a very social person, so he always caught up with police. So even though he wasn't at the jobs, a lot of time he'd have a few drinks at the club. I say a few, in quoted in commas. But so how did you deal with, like, because of course it's a friendship, it's a mateship, and it was also a bit of a debrief as well. How did that affect you, like when you're going through the police? Because I spent probably a bit more time at the police club, but how did you mind so much that he was catching up with his friends, or or any advice for anybody that's going through that?
Well, it did. I minded depending on the day of the week, sort of thing. Like if there was stuff on, needed to go home, or if he's been doing overtime and I was sick of it, I wanted him to come home. But that thing of like not being in isolation is when I would go to the police club as well and join him there. So I would also be social, going out and doing that. But yeah, there was times where I was just like so cranky. I can remember him passed out on the couch, and I got our little dog on the couch with him and was running to each end, and he was like jumping over to
Hey, and for everybody listening, I've been on the receiving end of Emer's temper from time to time, but I did deserve it at the time, that's for sure.
I wouldn't say temper. I'm just
Well, the other thing with that was you got to remember we're off night shift, so we hadn't been to sleep for a day. So you come home, you've had a few beers, you debrief what you've been talking about. It might be 11 o'clock in the morning, so you've been having a beer for the last 4 or 5 hours or whatever it was, and then you haven't been asleep for hours and hours and hours and hours. Like I'm talking 20 hours, so or longer. So all of us, like it's also you're extremely tired. So there's that part too. Actually, just talking about the club debrief stuff, and there's something I remember. We finished in Darwin, so we moved from Alice Springs to Darwin in 2017 when I took up the sergeant role at Darwin City, and I remember I'd come home and I hadn't been able to debrief because we didn't really have a beer in town. We couldn't drive home after we'd had a beer, and there wasn't really that opportunity. So what would happen was we would. I'd come home and I'd start talking to you about jobs, and I remember you said, "Can you not tell me this stuff? Like, I don't want to hear this horrendous crap." And it was like, "But I've got to tell someone." You want to tell us a bit more about that? I know we'll kick you off in a minute. Don't worry, it's all good. I just want to get your insight.
Not necessarily hearing about the horrendous stuff. It's just I don't have to hear about every little detail of the horrendous stuff.
Yeah.
Because I feel that I have some sort of low-level PTSD sort of things from knowing what actually happens. Because I think that can get passed along. Like the whole time Damo was in the police, I couldn't watch anything scary or gory or anything like that on TV for the entire time. I've only just in the last 2 years been able to watch some TV shows that have like blood in them. I couldn't do that beforehand. So it's sort of, like you sort of want them to tell you stuff, but you also don't want to be mentally scarred at the same time because you're there for support as well. Like you don't want two people living together having that trouble.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
good point.
I feel like, I have enough of an understanding and detail about certain things, and I chose not to know much detail about other stuff. Where I know other police wives that loved the detail and they would still like listen to crime stories on podcasts, and they could watch all the TV shows that I couldn't. So it was definitely a personal choice for me, but other wives are different. I was saying it depends on their personality.
Yeah. And I think that once that police club side of things died off, I think you got the brunt of it a lot more than what you would have previously, because I would have come home and just, we went to this today, and that would have been about it. But I'd already spoken it out. Whereas I came home a lot of times and it was still swimming through my head, so I just needed to get it out. And I remember a couple of times I went, "Oh, can you just stop? Like I don't want to hear this stuff." I said, "Oh, Jesus." So anyway, I do understand we need to send you back to our children who are probably destroying the house right now. We'll probably continue on. But thank you very much, my love. I told you we'd get you on eventually. It only took, 64 episodes or something?
That's right. Well, this is the 64th, so yeah.
Yeah.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Very good.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Emer.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so there we go. Straight from the horse's mouth.
Well, yeah, that was that was really good actually. She brought up some good points that I hadn't thought about. There was some really, really good getting involved, and it takes me back to what Bob said. And look, I think the important thing is it's also on the partner of the police officer as much as the police officer getting their partner involved with their mates and all that sort of thing. So it's a two-way street if you look at it like that. And I think for longevity in the job, or longevity in your marriage, it's very important to get that where you got that, I suppose, support network
Yeah.
around you, because we talk about policing being a lifestyle, but for the partner, it's also a lifestyle.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So I know that Ames just spoke about things like, and I'd known these, but it's like you get reminded that, oh yeah, that's right. Like Ames, we're going through this stuff. So I think it's good to hear that as well, because we don't sit around and talk about this stuff very deeply on a regular basis. We're quite busy. We've got 2 kids we've got to run up. We're running a small farm. We're both working, so we don't really talk. So it's interesting for me to listen back, and she thinks back to this because we've been out for a while now, and we're in Darwin for a while as well. So she's got to think back. 10 and 8 years ago was how long we were properly remote. So it's interesting to hear.
Oh, definitely, mate. There was some really good insight, and I think it's important. I mean, we talk about the debriefs and all that because you get another person's perspective and you share the load across, many shoulders and all that sort of thing. But hearing it from a perspective from somebody that's outside of the police but watching in is also important, because you kind of you get a different appreciation, I think, of the job and what it requires, but also what even the person that's a police officer has to do to help their partner.
Yeah. No, dead true. But it's mate, we've hit 36. I think that's pretty good. There's no reason for us to talk. The whole idea was to get the perspective of Ames. I'm pretty glad we did that, actually. I know it was a bit last minute, but it worked pretty well.
Well, and look, for everybody listening, we've been talking about this for a little while.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's been 64 episodes, but I think we were discussing this when we were even before we got to 10 episodes, getting that sort of insight. And I know there's a few people that have actually asked over the course of the year now. Because we've been going more than a year. There was quite a few people that gave us a shout out for our year anniversary as well. So,
oh, very good. Yeah, 17th of March. It's easy. Every St. Patrick's Day, think of the 2 ordinary cops,
and have a
and
green
have a Guinness.
yeah. But
No,
yeah, mate,
good.
I think that probably wraps it up. I think that was it was really informative, and Emer, thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, definitely.
She was fantastic. So, mate, you want to sign it off?
Yeah, so that's us. I'll be back in Hanani possibly next week, either Hanani or Coffs Harbour. I'm not sure yet, but we'll still talk to you next time. And don't forget to give us those shout outs. Let us know what you want to hear. If we don't know, we'll either research it or we'll make some shit up for you. Either way. No, that's not true. We'll think of something. If we don't know, we'll find out who does.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got enough contacts between us to find the answers. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, I'll see you everybody next week.
All the best.